Greetings, citizens! You're now trapped in the nerd cage with your hosts Mark and Jay. We hope you have a smashing good time.
Yes, hello and welcome. That's right, you're trapped in NerdCage Live. This ain't just a reaction show, but a debate show and a live discussion that makes people like you and I tick. So thank you for joining us tonight. I am your co-host, Jay St. G, coming to you live from Syracuse, New York, and always with me, my man, the Fiend from Louisville, Mark Withers. What's shaking, boss?
What is going on, man? I am beyond excited for today's episode because normally we hit you guys with whatever movie news is going on this week or next week or what have you. But this week, in honor of the 20th anniversary of this film, which I think started the golden age of comic book movies, we decided to dedicate a special episode to 2000's X-Men.
Yes.
And I can't wait. I mean, just digging into some of the lore and some of the behind the scenes stories. There's just so many factoids and interesting things to talk about here. But, before we even dig into that, I wanted to see how you felt about this, Jay.
Well, growing up, this movie came out at the right time. Like lightning struck when it needed to. So when I was growing up as a kid, keep in mind this 20 years ago, when the movie came out, I was in between 6th and 7th grade when the movie came out. I went opening night with my mom and my sister. But leading up to X-Men, I was hooked. Since like kindergarten, 1st grade onward, I was hooked on the 90s cartoon. Right. So that was fresh in my mind. The cartoon was still airing prior to the movie coming out. Rather if it was on, I don't know if it was on it started off on Saturday morning cartoons, but it eventually used to be on after school, Monday to Friday after school.
Right.
So the cartoon itself is what got me into X-Men in the first place. And like everybody else, my favorite character was Wolverine. And of course, this is before the internet really struck with the YouTube and all that. I first saw the trailer. I believe it may have been around March or April before the movie came out on Entertainment Tonight. And I remember my mind was blown seeing the trailer for the first time. Again, on TV, no YouTube, no internet. And I had my calendar marked oh my God, X-Men's coming out this summer in July. I cannot wait. And it's a very, very, very happy memory of a different time in my life. Like I said, I was going into 7th grade. And again, the movie, there's so much to talk about and so much to break down. In fact, I just got done rewatching it just before we did this recording.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think that you're not alone in that. I mean, X-Men for me was my gateway into comic books, and then also ultimately into cartoons and comic book movies and all of nerd culture. I got my mic kind of blocking me right now, but if you can see, I'm wearing my Wolverine shirt. This is something that's been a huge part of my life ever since I was, before I even became a teenager. And, even back then we were hearing rumblings of a film, a movie being developed. And it turns out, kind of digging into some of this stuff, that a lot of that stuff was true. They had a script that was written by Jerry Conway back in 1984, and they had optioned it to Orion Pictures. And the only reason why it never got made was because Orion was having financial difficulty at the time, and they had to sell off their option for the film to, I think it was to Fox ultimately. And then Fox there were a couple different iterations of it. They cast it a few times, but ultimately, Fox kind of waited until the late 90s to sort of really dig in and develop it into something that was going to be tangible.
Yeah.
The super interesting part about that whole thing is that the very first, you'll never guess who the very first actor was that they cast as Wolverine. I'm gonna let you guess.
John Travolta?
No.
I'm just guessing. I really don't know.
Bob Hoskins. Do you know who that is? The guy from Who
Mario.
Framed Roger Rabbit was going to be Wolverine.
Yeah, Mario. Oh, yeah. What about, and it wasn't Russell Crowe another one? Russell
Crowe was offered the role, but he declined. And he was actually friends with Hugh Jackman, and he recommended Hugh Jackman. They didn't go on his recommendation at first. They picked an actor named Doug Ray Scott, who a lot of people will recognize as, I think he was the villain in Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah.
He accepted the role, but then had to back out because of scheduling conflicts. And they were 3 weeks into filming before they decided on Hugh Jackman.
And he also mentioned to me, and this is funny, he mentioned this to me, it was maybe like a month ago, we were talking, and he said originally it wasn't Halle Berry, it was supposed to be Storm.
Correct. So back in 1990, they were James Cameron was attempting to get the film off the ground, and he had hired Catherine Bigelow to direct. A lot of people will recognize that name because she directed Zero Dark 30 and I think The Hurt Locker. Okay. Yeah, so back in those days, I think she had done, I'm trying to think of like the big movie that she did before that, but it doesn't come to mind. Anyway, they originally cast Bob Hoskins, and then they offered the role of Storm to Angela Bassett, which would have been
great.
I've been fan casting Angela Bassett as Storm forever. Like ever since I was a little kid, I thought that. I was like, man, she would be perfect. So the reason why she didn't accept the role is because they couldn't meet her salary requirements. She was a huge star at the time.
Yeah.
She was just a little bit more than what they could afford. So then their second option, and you're never going to believe this, Janet Jackson was offered the role.
What?
Janet Jackson was offered the role once.
I mean, I'm not knocking it because, to be fair to Janet Jackson, she was great in the second Nutty Professor movie.
Sure.
And that was,
she was
around,
that was
around the same time. That was only a year later after X-Men came out.
Right.
Wow, I never would have thought.
Yep. So they offered her the role. I think she declined. And then there were a few other considerations. I think Mariah Carey was in that mix. There were a few other actors that they offered it to before they landed on Halle Berry.
Huh. Wow. I learned quite a bit today about this.
Yeah. Yeah, I learned a ton of like shockers. I mean, there's actually, it looks like about, just looking at this list, there's about like 10 different actors that at one point or another were considered for the role of Wolverine. Would you like to hear them?
You know what? Yes. Just go down the list.
All right. Okay, so we have Russell Crowe. We knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Keanu Reeves.
Okay.
Mel Gibson. Aaron Eckhart. Jean-Claude Van Damme. Viggo Mortensen. Edward Norton. And we mentioned Bob Hoskins. And then this one really kind of threw me for a loop, but it made some sense. So at some point before they offered the role to Hugh Jackman, they invited Glenn Danzig to come in and audition. It makes sense because like in the source material, Wolverine is about 5'2". He's really stocky. Glenn Danzig already has kind of the look that Wolverine would have had. But he didn't even audition. He just turned it down.
I'm glad.
Me too.
Don't get me wrong. I like the Misfits and I like Danzig, but I'm glad that did not happen. Like I said, the only one on that list that would have been like made me think, oh, I think he would pull it off is Russell Crowe.
Oh yeah, Russell Crowe would have been great.
Yeah. But the thing is, I mean, we've heard funny stories about his personality. I think Hugh Jackman's personality and his charisma, things just worked out for the best.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, they picked the right person for that role.
I know, it's just amazing.
Can't get anybody better, I don't think.
And I think Patrick Stewart's perfect as well. I mean, obviously, I grew up in a Star Trek household, so that was really the person I recognized right away when I first saw the trailer. So, so my excitement level was already high, So. Now, here's one thing I love about. I'm just gonna go off the things I love about the movie, and I'm gonna talk about stuff that I rewatched that I'm gonna nitpick. But for starters, the one thing that we haven't mentioned yet, I love Tyler Mane as Sabretooth.
Oh wow, yeah.
Tyler Mane was great.
Yeah.
here's the thing. So Tyler Mane, if I'm not mistaken, he's a Canadian. He was a Canadian wrestler, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Some people, for those who don't know who Tyler Mane is, he's also Mike Myers in the Rob Zombie version of Halloween 1 and 2. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's Mike Myers. Yeah, so he's Mike Myers in Halloween 1 and 2, and I think he was also in the Devil's Rejects. But he's just saying he's got the size and the look. No, don't get me wrong. I like Liev Schreiber too, but Liev Schreiber was too small and didn't have the personality for Sabretooth. Tyler Mane, I wish they kept Tyler Mane in the Wolverine prequel, and I also wish that they didn't. I mean, he's presumed dead, but we never saw Sabretooth again. I mean, and saying in the future films, not in the prequel, but in the future films, we never saw Sabretooth again, which is kind of a disappointment because in my mind, he wasn't dead because he's got the recovery powers and stuff. So
yeah, exactly. I never assumed that he was dead, and I always kind of wish that at some point we would have seen that version of Sabretooth again.
Yeah.
You know, my other regret is that I really wish that they had allowed him to talk more. Like, he really didn't have any dialogue.
Well, that's the thing. He's not, I mean, he's more of a wrestler. He's not like a full-blown actor.
Sure. But The Rock was a wrestler too.
Yeah.
But
I just loved the portrayal, the way he looked, the roars and everything else. I love, it's how I envisioned what Sabretooth would have looked, Victor Creed Sabretooth would have looked like in a movie. I mean, it was just, they nailed. There's so much stuff that the original movie nailed. Another thing that they nailed in the movie, I love, even looking back at it, is the relationship between Xavier and Magneto, that they're frenemies.
Right.
They established that right in the opening scene in the White House, where he confronts him and says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And then he just says, "I'll bring you hope, but stay out of my way." Like, stuff like that, little stuff like that were great. And here's where X-Men changed the landscape of comic book movies forever. One, it started the trope of the Stan Lee cameos.
Right.
Stan Lee cameoed the beach scene. Mm-hmm. No dialogue though, but he was standing, the Senator Kelly at the beach. There he was. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I loved is that I feel like Magneto on screen was the first villain in the way I look in cinema history, in my view, that a villain that you sympathize for.
Right.
Not so much that you're rooting for him, but you sympathize. You understand his point of view, the mutant superiority. You get it.
Right.
And I feel like villains before Magneto in cinema, it was never like that. I feel like X-Men was the first time, in my view, where you sympathize for the villain.
And I agree with that 100%. I mean, I was thinking about films that kind of came before that, just to kind of think about well, did the Batman films do that? Did any of the Richard Donner Superman films do that?
Darth Vader.
Right. I mean, you really didn't get a sense of what drove those characters, the villains in those films, you did in this X-Men movie. Right. Yeah. I mean, the very opening scene is a young Magneto in a concentration camp, and he's being ripped away from his mother, and he knows he'll never see her again, and his powers activate as a result of his emotion. And and you get a sense right away that this is what forms him. This is what scars him and makes him think the way that he does. Not just about mutants being separate from humans, but just how he and his family had been marginalized for their religion. And so with a scene like that, and with sort of like you said, that opening scene with him and Professor X in their conversation, it kind of gives you it kind of humanizes that character. Whereas before that, those types of movies, comic book genre movies, didn't really give you the villain's point of view in that way. Yeah. And I think that's one of the big reasons why that film is so important.
Yes. And then, of course, Michael Fassbender just took that to the next level. I mean, that's a whole other topic, but I'm just saying, again, Magneto in my mind was the first villain that you felt for.
Right.
And I'm glad they started that trope.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I think that I'm not sure if it was a conversation that you and I had, or it might have been a conversation that I had with my friend Dion McGill on his podcast.
Mhm.
But what I was saying is that like this was really the first film that producers outside of the comic book genre actually looked at and said, "Wow, we can actually make films that transcend like the tights, like the superhero, all the classic superhero tropes,
Yes.
and we can involve like real human stories and add drama and pathos to these types of films."
Absolutely.
So in my view, this is really, if not the most important comic book film, one of the most, because it kicked off a golden age for us. Whereas before everything was pretty much
Well, you
done.
could make the argument for Blade, though.
You could, but at the same time, it doesn't give you what X-Men gave you, which is like
agreed.
a humanized villain. Frost in that film, he's just 100% evil. He just looks at humans as food, and you don't really see like the vampire's point of view at all.
Yeah, you don't sympathize for him either.
Right. And this film, you actually get a sense of like, okay, this is what drives these other mutants to do what they do. And like, maybe they have a point, so I've kind of rambled on enough about that.
No, this is great. So I want to talk about two more things that you may know or you may not know, that involve in the first X-Men movie. One, now, I don't know if there's ever been any pictures or footage ever released, but originally, Hugh Jackman was supposed to wear a mask with the X-Men, with the Wolverine costume.
Correct.
They had him wear the mask, and then of course Bryan Singer pointed out, well, why is he hiding his face? What's the reason for him hiding his face? There's no reason for him to hide his face. And then he took the mask off, and they never added that to the costume ever. So I'm wondering if there's footage or even pictures of the mask. I'm wondering what the mask. I'm just curious to what the mask would have looked like. But I guess it was made, and he did wear it when they started filming those scenes at the Statue of Liberty. But for whatever reason, as I pointed out before, Bryan Singer said, "Nah, we don't need the mask." The other thing, now there were a lot of deleted scenes, cut scenes, and the scenes they may or may have not filmed in the first movie.
Right.
One. Do you remember the scene right before Charles Xavier got knocked out by the Cerebro, the corrupted Cerebro?
Mm-hmm.
And Hugh Jackman said, "Hey, I'm not the one that put the sunroof through, at the train station, pal." And then they're bickering, "Hey, well, you the one that stabbed Rogue in the chest." And then then Halle Berry comes in, "Hey, Senator Kelly's dead." And then right there, Patrick Stewart said, "Okay, settle this." What was supposed to happen after that scene, we were supposed to see the Danger Room. Patrick Stewart wanted, Xavier wanted Cyclops and Wolverine to duke it out in the Danger Room to settle their differences. We never got to see that. I don't know if it was ever filmed or not, but intentionally, there was supposed to be a Danger Room in the first X-Men movie. It never happened.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I had heard the story about the Danger Room before. I would love to know if like that's somewhere in the outtakes. I imagine by now, if it existed, that we'd see it in some point, like in some form. But that would have been amazing to see. Also, like in addition to like the Wolverine mask, apparently originally all the X-Men were supposed to have costumes that were similar to how they appear in the comic. Yeah. And they did several camera tests with like Cyclops wearing like the traditional blue and yellow, the blue and gold. They had Jean Grey dressed up as Marvel Girl. But those camera tests made them look silly. And they didn't.
And that's why they threw that joke in there. Would you prefer yellow spandex? That's why they threw that joke.
That was meant to be sort of an inside joke to everybody because they had done these camera tests and it just looked ridiculous. And so they decided to go.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I understand that the whole Matrix, the black look kind of. I mean, it was kind of overdone for. I mean, this is not by X-Men's fault at all. But after X-Men, the whole wearing the black suit Matrix look kind of caught on way too. It went on for way too long in like other films.
Sure, I mean, I think it.
I understand why they did it because I agree. I can't picture. I don't know if I could have pictured the yellow spandex, the blue span. I don't know if I could have pictured that in the movie. I'm glad they went with the black.
Sure, me too. I agree with that 100%. Like, I think that all started with Batman, actually, like the 1989 Batman, because his suit was all black and it didn't appear like that in the comics, like in any like form that I knew at that time. And once they did that, I think every comic book related film, every character that they had, instead of having them in their actual colors, they would just have them in like a black suit, like. And that was just sort of like the accepted thing. Like when I first watched it, I didn't even think twice about it. I wasn't like, man, it'd be cool to see like Wolverine in like the blue and gold or like the
I didn't think about it because I thought the characters were portrayed so well.
Right.
That it didn't bother me that they weren't wearing the traditional costumes. The characters were done so well, it didn't bother me. I fell in love with the movie. Again, Magneto's costume was pretty traditional, and so was Sabretooth's parents. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about the movie that I mean, like I said, I don't know if I'm right. Do you want to hear my nitpicks or no?
Sure. I mean,
okay. No, again, this is not anything bad.
The negatives.
Well, it's not necessarily negative, but there's one thing that I didn't catch as a kid as I caught as an adult. This bothers me. This is the one thing in the movie that makes zero sense to me. Is when Mystique breaks into the mansion and goes under, disguises herself as Bobby, aka Iceman.
Right.
How did Xavier, with his powers, not know? Wait a minute, we have an outsider in here. Like, how did they not? Even Wolverine, he was in the mansion. Why didn't he sniff it out? Like, why didn't he sniff it out? And why didn't Charles, with his powers, pick up on that? That's one thing that bothered me.
Yeah. I think let me answer that one though, because I think I do have an answer for it. Like not the Logan part. Like I think like the Wolverine part is for real. Like I agree with that part. The other part, like with Xavier not like figuring it out right away, like I don't know that they explained it in the film or not. It's been a long time since I've watched it. But in the comics, they make a point of him like drawing the line at reading people's minds all the time. Like he's like, it's not the right thing to do to be in people's heads. So it could be that he just wasn't like tuned in to like Mystique's thoughts. He just like saw Bobby Drake and just like, okay, it's Bobby, and didn't really like, didn't get a sense, like nothing pinged for him because he wasn't looking for that. That was how I've always reconciled.
Okay, I guess. All right. I mean, it's still. I guess it's whatever. I mean, I guess you have a good answer for that one. Now, here's one thing that bothered me a little bit. Well, even when I first saw the movie. Now, I wish I didn't like the decision of them killing off Senator Kelly.
Right.
Because in the cartoon he was pivotal. We did. I love how he's portrayed. I love how the fact that he was. It was
great. He was cast great too.
Yeah. I don't know the actor's name, but he was in the Crucible. Well, anyway, but I liked how he was portrayed. How he was hell bent on getting the Mutant Registration Act, and it was the same thing in the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what bothered me is they killed him off so. Well, I should say so soon, but I think it would have been better to keep him alive, because we didn't get to see him change in the cartoon. We see him change his mind and his feelings.
Right.
We never got to see that. The other thing we didn't get to see, I mean, they kind of threw it in there as an Easter egg, but originally, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't his son supposed to be a mutant with stretchy powers? And he said, "I'm sorry, Dad," and then he freaked out that his son was a mutant.
Right.
They didn't have that in this movie, so instead, when he got irradiated from that machine, he had the stretchy powers himself, and then he died from it. I just think it would have been better if they kept him alive, and we didn't get to see that character evolve to what we knew. Maybe the reason is maybe they didn't know if they're going to make another X-Men movie or not. But I wish they would have kept Senator Kelly alive, and we get to see that character evolve. We didn't get that.
Yeah, and I think that is the reason. We live in an age now where, we we have the luxury of assuming that, like, hey, if a comic book movie is made, it's a franchise and they're going to make 2, 3, 4, 5 movies off of it,
Yeah.
But back then it was like a very, very touch and go genre, right? Like it was very unlikely that like X-Men was going to be a hit outside of people who were familiar with the characters.
Yeah.
So I think like the studio was probably thinking that, hey, we need to make this change just in case, you know what I mean? Just in case this is our only shot to tell like his story, but to tell his arc, but I agree with you. Like, it would have been much, much better if they would have allowed him to sort of transform emotionally and like kind of change his mind about how, about the Mutant Registration Act. And we, it would be great if we got to see him as Senator Kelly, the ally of mutants.
Yeah. And another disappointment, because it was in there if you watch all the behind the scenes footage, but there was supposed to be a dialogue between Magneto and Senator Kelly right before he irradiated him. There was supposed to be a long dialogue when he was, remember he was dragging him the chair. There was supposed to be a long dialogue that they cut out, and it's a damn shame that they did, because it would have been great to see them arguing about their differences of how they view mutants, and it's a damn shame they cut that out of the movie. It was done. If you can find the behind the scenes footage, it's out there. And the other thing that's kind of disappointing is one thing we haven't mentioned yet. Ray Park, who a lot of people know, best known as Darth Maul from Star Wars Episode 1. When you have a martial arts superstar, stunt coordinator, Ray Park, I wish they had done more with that character as far as fighting. We didn't get to see enough of Ray Park's skills in the movie. That's a little bit of a letdown. I don't know if there was like more fight scenes that were in there, but I feel like the movie kind of, gypped us a little bit in Ray Park's abilities.
Right. And yeah, I feel that way about a lot of the characters, like I would have loved to see, much more of Storm using her powers. I would have loved to see like an actual all out, like a real battle between the X-Men and the Brotherhood, the way that they do that in the comics, where you have like 2 or 3 on each side and they're all fighting each other. Like that, I kind of was expecting that when I first watched it. It didn't kill the movie for me, but it was a little bit of a letdown. It's like, we get this one like quick scene of Storm like electrifying Toad.
Well, she also electrocuted Sabretooth at the train station. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. But yeah, there were just like these little quick snippets of using their powers as opposed to like having a real battle, which we did see in like subsequent X-Men movies. But in that first one, I think it could have elevated if they had done some stuff like that.
Another thing that this movie got right that I wish they followed up with, they did in X-Men 2, but not the other movies. I want to shift gears to Mystique. Right. Rebecca Romijn was amazing. This was my introduction to Rebecca Romijn. I didn't know who she was prior to this movie. But for those who don't know, maybe you do know, she was in fact completely naked. And she was wearing prosthetics, blue makeup, and it's just pretty cool how a lot of those camera shots they were quick shots, so you didn't see any of her parts exposed.
Sure.
I'm trying to keep it G-rated, but like, but she was in fact naked, and the way they moved the camera around and I thought the camera work with Mystique was done brilliantly, and the makeup was amazing. But the one thing that bothers me that this movie got right that the other X-Men movies, Jennifer Lawrence, they didn't do this with Jennifer Lawrence, is when she spoke. When Mystique spoke, she had that creepy voice.
Right.
And we never saw that again. Right. I mean, a little bit in X-Men 2, but we never saw that creepy voice again. And then when Jennifer Lawrence played the character, they never had her with that creepy voice. I mean, that kind of bothered me in the other movies. I love how it was done, how she had that creepy voice, because the creepiness, the eyes, and her movement, the way, like, for example, like her movement, like when she like gets up, when Wolverine knocks her down, then she gets up, she does like that spinning move, and she gets up, and then she's like climbing the pole with just her hands, with her legs up in the air. Like, my God, it's so cool how they made that character look and behave, and it was just great how it was done. And I feel like all the other X-Men movies never matched that ever since.
Yeah, and you're right about that. I will agree with that. I mean, X2 to a certain extent, like I just think that her portrayal, like she really got the character, you know, like, just, reading anything with Mystique in the comics, like that's the voice you envision. That's how you envision her actually moving, and how she would act and stuff like that. She really like was tuned into that in a way that I don't think that Jennifer Lawrence ever was.
No, I 100% agree. Another thing too I love about the first movie, as a fan of the X-Men, I caught on to it as a kid too, is the attention to detail, the little things. Especially the one thing I don't hear anybody talk about. Going back to Sabretooth, obviously Wolverine, we go into this movie with Wolverine's memory already been erased.
Right.
Okay. And it looked like, if you caught onto it, it was that Sabretooth was suffering from the same thing. Because the scene where he was looking at the dog tags,
right?
He took the dog tags from Logan, then Magneto grabbed him, and then asks, "Where's the mutant now?" Puts him on the table and goes, "Come on, we have work to do." And then he starts walking. Then he turns around, looks at the table, and then he grabs the dog tags. And then at the end of the movie, he's wearing them. And then during the fight, Logan grabs and goes, "Hey, this is mine." Like,
right.
It's just great, the attention to detail, and it's a damn shame we never got to see this explored more. Again, it's a missed opportunity in the other movies, is that they established that Sabretooth was suffering the same thing that Logan was going through, and he had no clue of the connection that they had.
Right.
And it was cool that they had, at least this movie had it in them to kind of put those subtle hints out there.
Right. I agree. Like I really wish that they had kind of delved a little deeper in the subsequent movies that came after that. I think they touched on like the Weapon X program like a little bit, like the Alkali Lake stuff in the next film, and dug a little bit deeper into that in subsequent films. But that relationship between Logan and Sabretooth, at least that version of Sabretooth, I think that should have been a much bigger part of the later films.
Yeah.
Like they shouldn't have just saved that for X-Men Origins and then changed the actor and then changed kind of like it didn't work for me. Like that film in particular didn't work for me as far as like their dynamic. Like it just didn't match with the continuity didn't like work in terms of,
and that's been a problem with the rest of the films, the continuity.
Right. So
I don't know. Anything else you want to add? Any nitpicks or anything? Any praises about X-Men that we have? That I haven't touched on yet.
I mean, we could talk about this film like all day. Like we could turn this into like a 2-3 hour episode if we really wanted to. But I think that we have a lot of other aspects of the X-Men franchise that I think we want to explore. So one of the things I think we were talking about is like the movie rankings, right? So you and I have like kind of done battle on this before, but I
got my list right here in front of me on my phone, so I didn't forget it.
Right, and I've got mine right here.
Be my guest. Go first.
All right, so I'll go ahead and go first. I was gonna let you go first because I, like you said, like you've been waiting a long time, but but one of the things that you and I differed on is that like you kind of count the Deadpool movies in there. So at the last minute, I threw my Deadpool stuff in.
Okay, fair enough.
So
this is prior to New Mutants, by the way. Anyone who's listening, this is the 12 movies that we've gotten so far. No New Mutants.
Right. We haven't seen New Mutants yet. We don't know how good it is. I imagine it's probably going to rank pretty high because I'm a huge New Mutants fan. Hopefully, they've done justice with it. But so from 1 to 12, I should probably do this backwards. So let's do 12 first. Like the very worst X-Men film, in my opinion, is Dark Phoenix.
Okay.
Totally, you know what I mean? Like people think differently about it. But number 11 for me is X-Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay.
for the reasons that I just mentioned.
Yep.
Number 10, X-Men Apocalypse. It had some good aspects to it, but for the most part, not that great.
Yep.
Number 9, X-Men: The Last Stand.
Okay.
The worst of the original trilogy of X-Men films, but not the worst of all the X-Men films.
Okay.
Okay. Number 8 for me is Deadpool 2. I really enjoyed that, but there are other movies I like better. Number 7, The Wolverine.
Okay. Now that one's pretty high. So just real quick, what makes the Wolverine better than the other ones you've mentioned?
I just like that one probably a little better than a lot of people do. I like any story that involves Wolverine in Japan.
Okay,
like there's a few like different story arcs that he has where he's in Japan and the different characters there and I just like that they explored that idea, and I like the concept of him like not having his powers. Like, oh, like all of a sudden I'm not healing. Like how do I deal with that? How do I continue without my healing factor? Okay. So that's pretty high up there. Number 7. Number 6 for me is Deadpool, the first Deadpool. Okay. That was an amazing surprise to me. Yep. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm a fan of the Deadpool comic. I really didn't think that they were going to ever do it justice, especially after seeing Wade Wilson in the X-Men Origins Wolverine, like how they did him in that. Like I just was very mad about that. And I was worried that like when they actually did a Deadpool standalone film that they would take way too many liberties and not make it good. But I was surprised at just how good that movie is.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah. So number 5, X-Men First Class. I just loved everything about that. I loved that it was a period piece. I love that they really explored Magneto and went deeper into his origin, the relationship between he and Professor X, you know, like starting out as good friends and even within that friendship, seeing like the seeds of their discord, like seeing like, okay, I see it differently. I see the solution as this versus a peaceful solution. Number 4, the original X-Men, mainly because that to me is the one that kicked off the era that we're in now, which is good, high quality stories, very well told, very well directed with, you know, in a lot of cases, Oscar winners, you know, Oscar winning actors. Number 3, Days of Future Past. I think that, you know, in terms of like having a story that has to do with like time travel and things like that, you know, I think it was very well done. It has a few problems, but overall, it's good to see both the new X-Men, the newer cast, and that original cast kind of in the same film and seeing, you know, how each character's different, how each character changed over the years and different, you know. So number 2, X-Men or X2, X-Men United. Okay. To me, that's the truest, in my honest opinion, the truest X-Men movie. Like it's the closest one to the actual comic in terms of its tone, in terms of the action, just the whole anti-mutant vibe and like just the animosity that they felt, like this idea of them actually being hunted was more deeply explored in that film. The opening sequence with Nightcrawler, me, one of the best even now, like in terms of the effects and how he vamps, like how he like transforms, how he teleports and stuff in that film. Like it's just incredible. And they picked the perfect actor to play Nightcrawler, Alan Cumming. I mean, I really wish that he had been in the rest of the films going forward. I really think that was a missed opportunity.
They I do okay. Well, I got to pause you for a moment before you get to your number 1. But one thing that the first X-Men movie did is then the wave of X-Men video games came out. Now this is where I want to point some out to you. When before X-Men 3 came out, there was an X-Men video game called I don't remember the exact name of the video. I want to say it was just called X-Men 3. But it was a prequel to X-Men 3. It took place between X-Men 2 and 3. And you played as Wolverine, as portrayed by Hugh Jackman. You played as Nightcrawler, and you played as Bobby, Iceman.
Right.
They explained why the game actually explained why Nightcrawler didn't come back.
Okay.
And in case you're wondering, and it was Alan Cumming who voiced him in the game too, or if it wasn't him, sounded just like him. This video game takes place at Alkali Lake, and Wolverine confronts Kelly Hugh again. That's Deathstroke.
Lady
again.
Deathstrike. Yeah.
Yeah, Lady Deathstrike. Yeah. And anyway, as you go on later into the game, they're doing these dangerous missions, and then Nightcrawler says to Storm, "Listen, what we're doing is against my peaceful biblical nature."
Okay.
So at the end of the game, he resigns the X-Men because he didn't want to do any of the dangerous missions, fighting, and all that other stuff. That's why Nightcrawler wasn't in the X-Men movies afterwards. Unfortunately, they never referenced it, but it was explained in a promotional video game.
Man, that's still a huge bummer. Like I think that there's so much like meat on that bone. Like, what I mean, as far as like that character and his unknown relationship with Mystique, like that.
They teased it. There was one scene together.
Right. They teased it, but they never like gave us that satisfaction of him like discovering who she is to him and discovering like his real origin. They didn't even ever give us that in X-Men Apocalypse, which I really was hoping for in that, but it's spilled milk anyway.
Well, they did. Azazel, his father, was in First Class.
Sure.
So they never explained, like you just said, they never explained, there was a 10-year gap and they never explained.
Right, exactly. And that was another thing, right? So like, they never explained Azazel and Mystique, ever getting together. They never
wasn't it a rape though? It wasn't.
In the comics it was. There've been a couple of different versions of it though, I think that
because I thought it was she was raped by Azazel, and then she had an affair with Victor Creed, and she had another son.
Right.
And then what we never saw in the movies, she was also Rogue's mother too, or adopted. Right.
Mother. Yeah, and they never gave us any of that.
Yeah.
So,
sorry to interrupt you.
No. Like I love talking about this stuff, but my number one pick is, I think that you already know it's Logan. I mean, it's just like the best, arguably the best comic book movie, period, in terms of the fact that it transcends the genre. It's not just like a movie about superheroes. It's like a character study about this, about this guy and what is actually happening to the adamantium in his body. Like, what's it doing to him? What is his life like after all the other mutants that he's known in his life are dead? You know what I mean? Like, it introduces us to an interesting character, X-23. Like incredible, awesome. And I wish that we had seen a little bit more of her. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of her. Like,
not
maybe
just that, but like at least Logan gave us like the rated R blood, Wolverine slicing and dicing and this and that. We finally got to see.
We finally get like a true. Yeah, we finally get a true version of like Logan unleashed.
Berserker rage and Side note, man, like I've been listening to, how like we talked about on one of our episodes where Spotify kind of teamed up with DC, and DC is now going to be coming up with these like sort of audio dramas based on their universe. Marvel did the same thing like a year ago. So there's a Wolverine series on Stitcher, and there's 2 seasons of it, and it's phenomenal. Like, it's like incredible. Like the stories that they're able to tell, like with Logan, as far as like him, like you really get a sense of like what's in his head all the time, like what makes him so angry, what drives him, so I just wanted to mention that, man. Like, anybody who's really interested in the Wolverine character in particular should check out Wolverine: The Lost Trail. It's what it's called. And it's on Stitch. Awesome. All right, I guess I'll go down my list, but I'm gonna go in from best to worst, so that way we can kind of again, my number one pick, same as yours, is Logan.
Right.
There is no disputing that.
Yeah,
and
it's undeniable.
I was moved by the movie. I love the fact that this movie was marketed as this is the last time we're gonna see Hugh Jackman. This is gonna be the last time to see is Patrick Stewart. Even though we knew what was gonna happen at the end, but the execution, we already knew what was gonna happen, but the execution still got to me, still gets to me to this day. I love everything about the movie. I love how it was shot. I love everything about it.
Yeah.
My number two, again, a little bit different. My list is similar to yours, but there are some things that are different. My number two is Days of Future Past, the Rogue cut.
The Rogue cut. That sounds interesting. I don't think I've seen that.
Whoa. You haven't seen the Rogue cut?
No, I haven't seen the Rogue cut.
Oh, man. Okay, so for those who don't know, all right, there's two versions of Days of Future Past, the theatrical cut and the Rogue cut. The Rogue cut came out 1 year or close to a year after the movie came out on Blu-ray. The Rogue cut has Anna Paquin in it. And there's some additional footage. Her role is crucial. I can't believe they actually took this out. I can't believe this didn't make it to the theatrical cut. So Bobby and who's the other one? Someone, I think it was Bobby and no, it was Bobby and Magneto. They go on a mission. They go back to the Xavier school. They go on a mission to rescue Rogue, who was being experimented on by Sentinels at Xavier school. They needed Rogue. Okay, I'm so glad we're talking about this. So they needed Rogue because Kitty Pryde was getting tired. She couldn't hold on to Wolverine's mind. She couldn't hold on, and she needed help. And it said, well, the only help we can know is we can go get Rogue, and she can transfer her power,
absorb her powers. Yeah,
that's what happened. So what happened was Bobby and Magneto go to rescue Rogue. In the process, Bobby is killed. I'm sorry, I'm spoiling it. Bobby gets killed at the mansion, and so Magneto and Rogue come back to the hideout, and then Kitty Pryde looks over like, what happened to Bobby? And then Rogue started crying like, Bobby's gone, and then she starts having an emotional breakdown. And right when that happens, she grabs Kitty Pryde by the face, absorbs her power, and then is holding on to Wolverine's mind.
Wow.
That I don't know why that got cut, but anyway, if you watch the Rogue cut, those scenes that I just described to you are in the movie. That makes the movie better.
Oh man, now I really do want to see it, even though you spoiled it for me.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, but I had to point out what the difference was. It was crucial. But it's executed so well, and it brings the emotions even higher because prior, obviously we knew about the love triangle between Kitty, Rogue, and Bobby.
Right.
It's so cool how they brought that back, and it also made sense that hey, she can't hold on to him forever, and she's getting So I thought it was clever. And again, I'm baffled to this day why that got cut. I don't know if there's contract issues. I don't know, but yeah. So if you can find it, it's called the Rogue cut of X-Men: Days of Future Past, and that's my number 2 pick.
Awesome.
My number 3 pick is actually X-Men: First Class.
Nice.
Now listen, when X-Men First Class came out, I was expecting it to be crap. Keep in mind, we're coming off the Wolverine prequels, and we're coming off X-Men 3, we're coming off X-Men Origins. So at that point, I was done with X-Men movies. Like I don't care that there's an X-Men prequel coming out. We already had an X-Men prequel, and it was bad. And then like Monday, after the weekend, after it came out, everybody at work's like, oh my god, dude, this movie's good. This is like Dark Knight good. I'm like, no way. No. You got to go watch First Class. And I did. I went to go see it either Monday or Tuesday night after it came out, and I was blown away. Nice. And that was my introduction to Michael Fassbender and James McAvoy. And to me, Michael Fassbender took that role to the next level, and I haven't turned back ever since. I loved X-Men First Class. Great X-Men movie. Number 4, I'm going to go X-Men 2. Number 5, I'm going to go the original X-Men. Number 6, I'm going to go Deadpool 2, and then 7, Deadpool. I actually like Deadpool 2 a little more because I love Josh Brolin as Cable, and I love that they retconned Juggernaut to what he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So in my mind, Deadpool 2 was better, but to be fair, about these two Deadpool movies, I feel like the rewatchability is not there for me because it's funny at first, but rewatching it's not as funny unless you have someone in the room that hasn't seen the movie. But I just feel like the Deadpool movies rewatchability is not that high for me, as great those movies are. Number 8, I'm going to get shit for this. Number 8 for me is Dark Phoenix. I like Dark Phoenix. It wasn't perfect, but my God, Dark Phoenix was better than X-Men 3, and it was better than X-Men Apocalypse. Number 9 is X-Men 3. As bad as that movie was, I loved Kelsey Grammer's role as Beast. And the one thing that X-Men 3 started that everyone else followed after that, post-credit scenes. X-Men 3.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
Started the post-credit. Well, excuse me. He-Man and the Legends of the Universe with the Skeletor post-credit. But it was really, in the modern era, it was X-Men 3 started the post-credit scene. But anyway, it was a bad movie, but I loved Kelsey Grammer as Beast. He was perfect. Number 10 is X-Men Apocalypse. That was a huge letdown for me. As great as Oscar Isaac, is that his name?
Yes.
As great as he was, he wasn't I didn't think they portrayed Apocalypse is supposed to be the most powerful mutant, an unstoppable force. They killed him at the end in the stupidest way. I have my problems with X-Men Apocalypse. Then number 11 for me is the Wolverine. I know you said you defended that movie because of the Japan setting. What bothered me about the movie is the portrayal of Silver Samurai. I hated it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
And then number 12, X-Men Origins Wolverine. That's just bad. No, it's not Hugh Jackman's fault. Hugh Jackman did just fine. It was everything else around that movie. The terrible CGI on his claws. It was bad. It's the worst X-Men movie.
I can agree with that to an extent. I mean, it's definitely my second worst. I was so disappointed with that movie as a Wolverine fan.
I was stoked for it.
I was beyond stoked for it too.
Yeah.
But oh well. Hopefully they get it right the next time.
So everybody who's listening, tell us your list. Tell us what you think is your favorite X-Men movie. What's your least favorite X-Men movie? We'd love to know in the comments. Let us know.
Yes.
And so before we go, Mark, fan casting and of course the rumors of upcoming X-Men movies.
So as you know, we're not going to get an X-Men movie in the MCU for quite some time. Kevin Feige has already said that, he's got his 5-year plan mapped out. He's got all these movies. X-Men's not anywhere in that list. I think they really want to take their time, kind of figure out this quote unquote mutant problem as far as bringing them in. But eventually they're going to have to bring them in, right? So, to me, the most important casting out of the entire thing is Wolverine, right? Yeah. So you and I kind of talked about it, from time to time, but I actually have 3 actors that I think would be absolutely perfect. You may know some of these names, you may not know some of these names, but I'll just go ahead and throw them out, right? So the first one for me is a guy named Richard Armitage, who actually voices the Wolverine audio drama, and he's amazing in it. He's great. Okay. You probably don't know him by name, but right now he's on a TV show called Berlin Station, which is about CIA agents in Germany. But more famously, he's better known as Thorin in the Hobbit trilogy. He's the leader of the dwarves. So he doesn't look like that in real life. That's a prosthetic nose and a lot of things to change his face. If you look at his actual face, his features are very similar to Logan in the comic. So I think that he'd be a good pick. I also think Dominic Cooper would be a good pick too, because he's got the intensity, even though he's shorter than a lot of actors.
But Wolverine's supposed to be short. Right.
Wolverine in the comics is 5'2".
Yeah.
Which no actor on any of these lists that we've come across has been short like that. Dominic Cooper, I think, is not that short. I think he's probably 5'7", 5'8". But after seeing him in a few things, he's the lead on the TV show Preacher, and the scenes that he's in where he gets really intense, especially the fight scenes, are very similar to the way Logan would fight.
Okay.
You know, and I just think he's a great actor. And then my third pick is Manu Bennett, who people will recognize as like Deathstroke in the Arrow TV show.
Oh, okay.
He's also in Chronicles of Shannara. He's a great actor. He's another tall guy, but you know, he's got the, you know, the build for it as far as like how broad he is. He's got the physicality for it. Like he's got the gruff voice. I think he could bring some justice to the role. You know, so that's my three. So I'm curious to see like who you would pick.
I got one. Okay, again, I'm not really gung-ho about seeing a new X-Men movie, in fact, recasting, because here's the thing. Hugh Jackman, unlike other actors who portrayed superheroes, there's only been one Wolverine.
Right.
For damn near 20 years.
Right.
And, I mean, there's been multiple Supermen, multiple Batman. I mean, you could argue Robert Downey Jr., but he only did it half as long as Hugh Jackman did. Half.
Right.
So, like, I'm just not ready. I don't have it in me to be ready to see a new Wolverine, but if I had to pick anybody who I'm familiar with, who I think would nail it, you know, he's a handsome fellow, and he's rugged, and he's badass. My pick is Carl Urban. His work in The Boys has been phenomenal, and remember, he was Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
And his... I know it's kind of funny, but his chin acting in Judge Dredd is so awesome. And like, I just feel like he's rugged enough, fierce enough. He looks similar to Hugh Jackman. I feel like he's got the body. I mean, he's not short, but he's muscular. He's rugged. I think he could pull it off.
I agree with that. I mean, I think that Carl Urban is phenomenal in pretty much everything that he does. And personally, I remember, you know, watching season 1 of The Boys, and there were definitely moments where I was like, oh, this is Logan right here. Like, he would make a great Logan. So you're right. I should have had that on my list, you know, like.
I'm glad you didn't, because that's the only one I had.
Right on. Yeah. So hopefully, you know, Feige eventually gives us somebody that
or even go with an unknown. Hugh Jackman was an unknown. Maybe we'll
absolutely.
Unknown.
You know, and a lot of times, like, that's the better way to go, right? So if you pick somebody that's like super famous, you know, you run the risk of just kind of thinking of that person like the real person. Like, oh, well, that's Matt Damon playing, you know, you know, not that they would ever pick him, but you know what I'm saying? So maybe maybe that is the way to go, is just to pick somebody who is just kind of unknown right now, and that having that role be the jumping off point for him.
Absolutely. We want to know who would you fan cast as the new Wolverine, or who would you fan cast as Storm or Rogue or Cyclops? We'd love to hear your picks. I mean, let us know in the comments.
Who would you pick as Charles Xavier? I'm curious about that.
I don't know. I mean, you could argue James McAvoy, because he's in his 40s now, and you need Xavier to be older. But oh Christ, I don't know. I didn't even think of that offhand. I mean, I'm thinking someone bald. Oh, you know what? I got one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not white, but I think he could pull it off. Giancarlo Esposito.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shaved his head, and I just think his mannerisms, the way he talks, how well spoken he is.
Mm-hmm.
I think he wouldn't. He's not. It'd be an odd choice, but he's of the age.
Right.
I think he'd be a great Charles Xavier.
I wouldn't be mad at that choice. I mean, it's funny you mention him, because there's sort of this now long-standing rumor that he's actually being looked at to play Magneto.
Oh! Ooh!
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, to me, that would be a pretty interesting choice, right? Because we already know that, you know, I don't think that, you know, if they set the X-Men in modern day, right?
Yeah.
Like, they can't continue.
You can't do the concentration camp.
You can't do like Auschwitz anymore, right?
Yeah.
So there's this theory that they're going to use Giancarlo Esposito, or they're going to cast Giancarlo Esposito, and they're going to use the Rwandan genocide in the 90s. And then in that, you kind of have a baked in conflict between him and Black Panther, right? Because you could say, well, the Wakandans knew what was happening and they have all this technology and they didn't help us when they could have. You know, they could have stopped the genocide.
Wow.
And so, you know what I mean? Like, so, like, I actually like that.
How'd you write those ideas, man?
I actually like that fan cast. So it would be cool if they did that. But, you know, getting back to like Xavier, I
you
think,
threw me off
like,
guard. Who would you pick?
Yeah, I you know, there's a lot of different actors that, like, when I look at them, I think like, yeah, that he would be a good choice. But I've always thought like Ben Kingsley would be a good choice.
Okay.
You know, you get a seasoned actor that's like right around like the age that Xavier would be in the comic. You know, he's already got a connection to the Marvel Universe, albeit with a different character. Yeah. You know, but that's not like the first time that's happened.
Yeah.
So, you know, you know, I think he would be like a great choice, you know, just not even that he's particularly different. I think he's classically Xavier, but I think he would be so different from like a Patrick Stewart that you wouldn't make a comparison. Your mind would just go in a different place. Yeah.
So everyone let us know. Who would you pick as Xavier? We'd love to hear in the comments. Casting's fun. This is what this show. This is why we're in the nerd cage.
Yes.
Okay, we get to talk, speculate, and we get to make fan casting. This is what this channel is about, man.
Yes, absolutely. You know, like this has been definitely, like, if not the most fun episode, like one of the most fun ones that I think that we've done. Like, I've thoroughly enjoyed like every second of this. And I think we could, if we wanted to, we could like make this a whole like other hour of stuff.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna do more look backs. We have more anniversaries coming up. We're gonna do a lot more look back episodes of, you know, 20th, 30th, et cetera, of anniversaries of films that, you know, that we really dig, and we couldn't pass up the opportunity to do the 20th anniversary of the X-Men. It was just too big. It was right there. The timing was perfect.
Right, I agree. You know, and speaking of like, you know, anniversaries coming up, we got like something very, very special coming up for fans of the Mortal Kombat franchise. We're not going to say exactly what it is, but we have something. We're working on something, and we're gonna be announcing it very, very soon. I think you guys will be really excited about it.
If you're a fan, listen to me very carefully. If you're a fan of the golden era of Mortal Kombat, the beginning, the first 3 games in the 90s, if you're a fan of 90s Mortal Kombat movies, film, and games, the golden era, we have something very special for you guys. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait to reveal it.
Me either. It's going to be a blast, you know, so stay tuned.
Yes, exactly. Well, anyway, before we go, we please ask you to like, comment, ring that bell, spread this show like fucking syphilis. So to you, I say, from Louisville to Syracuse, to all of our fans and friends around the world at NerdCage Live, enjoy life, stay safe, and good night.
Sayonara.
Ooh, trying to get out of the nerd cage, are ya? Well, before you go, hit that subscribe button. And if you're really intrigued, ring that bell. Thank you for dropping by. Until next time, tell everyone you know about NerdCage Live!